Hello and welcome back. In this episode we're going to be taking a look at the RadioListTile widget. The RadioListTile widget allows you to easily combine a radio widget and a ListTile widget into one convenient widget. You'll notice here our homepage state contains a scaffold with an app bar, and inside the body of the scaffold we're going to create a new ListView. And the ListView children will be as follows. What we're going to do is take the material primary colours and we're going to map each of these primary colours into a widget. So what we're going to do, inside our map function, we're going to return a RadioListTile, essentially returning a RadioListTile for each of the primary colours. You'll notice the squiggle there in our IDE because the value is required, group value is required, and onChanged is required. These first three parameters essentially are required. Now you'll also notice that RadioListTile accepts a type. This is different to the other list tiles which are based on a Boolean value, either true or false. The RadioListTile being slightly different in that it can have a custom type rather than just being tied to a Boolean value. So what we'll do is we will give it a type of colour, since that is what we will be choosing from. So we'll specify the type there of colour, and we will provide it with the required parameters: value, group value, and onChanged. Now the value of this RadioListTile will be the particular colour that we've got from the map function. The group value, for now we will just set to none, and onChanged will provide us with the colour that's been selected, and this is where we will update the group value of the RadioListTile. Now to store the group value of the RadioListTile, we'll create a new property in our homepage state class called colour, like so, and this property will store the selected colour from the list of RadioListTile widgets. We can update the group value therefore to be colour, and we can, inside the onChanged, we can call a setState, updating the colour property with the colour that the user has selected from the onChanged callback function. If we save this, you'll notice we now have a RadioListTile widget for each one of the material primary colours. You'll notice that by clicking these list tiles, the colour property of the homepage state is updated inside this setState with the selected colour, and this updates the group value of the RadioListTile. Essentially, the value of the RadioListTile is the RadioListTile specific value, and the group value is the group value that's shared by all of the RadioListTiles. For example, if we were to select red in this case, then the group value of all the RadioListTiles will be red, whereas each individual RadioListTile will have the individual value matching its particular colour, whether that be red, green, blue, etc. You'll notice there are another number of other parameters you can specify. For example, whether the radio is toggleable, the active colour of the radio, a title and subtitle, whether the title and subtitle span over 3 lines, whether the list tile is dense, a secondary widget, whether the list tile is selected, the control affinity, and whether the list tile is automatically focused when it comes into view. We'll take a look first of all at the toggleable parameter. Now, toggleable by default is set to false, and that means essentially that you are unable to toggle a RadioListTile on and off. That means that by default, once you have selected a value, you're then unable to unselect the value. However, by specifying toggleable of true, it will allow you to unselect any previously selected value. For example, you'll notice by tapping again, the RadioListTile's group value is essentially cleared. It's set to null in this case. For example there, tapping the first one will select it, tapping it again will then deselect it, and doing so, it calls the onChanged callback function with the colour set to null. We therefore update our property on the homepage state to be null, and that then sets the group value for all the RadioList tiles to null, essentially meaning that none of the RadioList tiles are selected. We'll leave toggleable as false for now, its default setting, and we'll take a look next at the active colour. Now the active colour allows you to control the colour of the radio widget itself. For example, we will specify an active colour of the primary colour that's inside the mapping function, and you'll notice there how the first radio then appears as red, the second one as pink, and so on and so forth, going through each of the material primary colours. You can customise that active colour to fit your particular requirements. Next up, we'll take a look at the title and subtitle parameters. These can be used much the same as the conventional list tile widget. For example, we will set a placeholder title for the purposes of this demonstration, and we will also set a placeholder subtitle, like so. You'll notice then all of our RadioList tiles gain that placeholder title and subtitle, which you can customise to suit your requirements. Next up, we'll take a look at the is3line parameter. By default, is3line is set to false. However, if we were to set it to true and apply an extra line to the subtitle, you'll notice how the RadioList tiles automatically adjust their vertical padding so they're still nicely spaced out on the page, even when you have 3 lines of content, 1 line of the title and 2 lines in the subtitle. If we were to leave the is3line as false, you'll notice how the list tiles become much more bunched together, losing their vertical padding and not looking as nice and not giving the user as visually appealing an experience as possible. We'll reset the title and subtitle back to just occupy 2 lines, like so. Next, we'll take a look at the dense parameter. The dense parameter controls the density of the RadioList tiles, which by default is set to false. As you can see there, no visual change takes place. However, if we were to set dense to true, you'll notice how the text becomes smaller and the list tiles become slightly closer together, allowing you to fit a greater number of RadioList tiles on the screen at any one time. Removing the dense parameter resets it back to false. Next up, we'll take a look at the secondary parameter. This allows you to specify a secondary widget, commonly an icon, to be displayed inside the list tile. In this instance, we use the account circle icon, and you'll notice how it appears on the right-hand side of the RadioList tile. This is the equivalent of specifying the trailing widget on the standard conventional list tile widget. The difference between the RadioList tile and also the checkbox list tile and the switch list tile is that on the checkbox list tile and the switch list tile, secondary appears on the left-hand side in the leading position. That's because the checkbox and the switch appear on the right. However, the RadioList tile is aligned with the radio appearing on the left, which means that the secondary widget appears on the right in the trailing position of the list tile. The next parameter we'll take a look at is the selected parameter. This controls whether or not the RadioList tile is selected. For example, by specifying true, you'll notice the list tiles become the application's primary colour, emphasising to the user that they are selected. for example, what you could do is you could specify if the colour equals colour, like so, then that applies a bit of a greater mark to the user that the first RadioListTile has been selected. You'll notice how when we then change to one of the other list tiles, the primary colour highlighting automatically follows wherever we've tapped. You can do this to apply greater visual appearance to the currently selected RadioList tile. Removing that like so, and you'll simply leave the radio selected and no change to the styling on the actual list tile, title, subtitle and secondary widget. You can also use the autofocus to automatically focus the list tile whenever it comes into focus on the view in the application. So essentially then, the RadioList tile allows you to helpfully combine a radio widget and a list tile widget into one useful, easy to use widget. Specify an individual value for each of the RadioList tiles and then an overall group value, which is the group value of all of the RadioList tile widgets. You've then got the onChanged callback function, which is called every time the value of the RadioList tile, in this case the selected colour, changes. You can specify a title and subtitle as you would do with a conventional list tile widget, and you can also specify a secondary, generally icon widget, to appear in the trailing position of the RadioList tile. As I say then, the RadioList tile allowing you to easily combine a radio and a list tile together, and you'll notice how throughout this demonstration I've tapped anywhere inside the RadioList tile, not specifically on the radio itself. This would be slightly different if you were to implement those two widgets separately in a row. If you were to do that, then you'd only be able to click on the radio to update the group value, unless you wired up the text widget, or list tile in this case, to also have that change. You'll notice the RadioList tile combines them together and performs that logic for you, so that wherever you click in the list tile, it will automatically update the group value accordingly, saving you time and effort. I hope you found this useful. Thank you very much for watching.